Okay, so we're moving forward. We have two more excellent lectures. The next speaker I want to invite on stage worked for a few very interesting companies. The first one was, well, maybe not the first one, but the first one I want to point out is Elbit, where he was involved with projects for upgrading aviation systems. So I think he's going to resonate a lot of what we heard here. Then he worked for Mellanox and back and forth to a little company called Qualcomm, which is perhaps one of the most interesting companies to look at today when we're migrating into this world of IoT. And I think he has a very interesting perspective on cybersecurity for IoT, maybe even specifically for the automotive industry, so I'm looking forward to hear it. So please help me welcome on stage the Vice President of Engineering at Qualcomm, Mr. Arik Mimran.
Thanks, Matan, for the introduction. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here today on automotive security. We'll start with a short movie. The car is going through its greatest revolution in more than a century. By 2025, people will no longer need to drive cars in order to get around. And this change is happening step by step. At first phase, we see alerting systems like anti-fatigue that give alert to drivers upon events. Like we have internal facing cameras that are monitoring the face of the driver, and in case of an emergency where we see the drivers lose focus, they can prevent accidents. Next, we see driver assistance systems that can self-drive cars in traffic jams and in highways. So these self-driving systems actually do better and safer work than humans, and we know that today. In parallel, we have entertainment systems in the car that make the passengers, hopefully only the passengers driving in the car, much more enjoyable. So the collection of all these features is what we call today smart car. This smart car is actually what gives us the opportunity to have a more entertaining driving as well as productive. Now, this doesn't stop here. In the future, the next thing is we're going to see completely self-driven cars, okay? Where cars drive autonomously on the roads, and actually we're as passengers just sitting there and monitoring things happening. Now, besides this, that turning our life much more productive while driving, it also increases the safety. So the smart car is by far the most sophisticated connected consumer product. But it doesn't start from scratch. It is based and begins from technology that we actually already have in smartphones. And it is based on 4 pillars, as I present here. First pillar is the connectivity, where we have LTE networks that allow streaming of high-resolution videos to within the vehicle. Connectivity is also used for communicating between different vehicles and for vehicles to infrastructure messaging. Next pillar is the applications, where we have operating systems that are in vast use in smartphones like Android, like QNX, now being used in automotive. We also leverage emergency assistance messaging and also over-the-air updates. So over-the-air updates, those besides the trivial function of updating applications, it also allows fixing bugs within the car. And this we already have in smartphones. Infotainment is mainly based, obviously, on high-resolution video engines as well as graphics. So all those cases where we see drivers very smoothly moving the navigation software, all this in high resolution is actually enabled thanks to a very powerful graphic engines. Besides that, passengers can also do productivity work and also watching movies at least on the rear displays. Machine learning is where image processing used for analyzing and understanding the surrounding of the vehicle. By this, we allow the main computer of the car making decisions upon obstacles or pedestrians that are at the surrounding of the car. So connectivity and smartness in smart cars actually means much more complexity. And we know that hackers that are already hacking PCs and smartphones, for them a car is simply the next target. And the car, one important attribute of it is that it's constantly connected. And this actually allows hackers to penetrate the car from the outside. And in fact, researchers were able to demonstrate few events of hacking, like, for example, taking over the car horns, or cutting the power steering of the car, or even spoofing the displays, either of the rear displays or even the dashboard displays. Now, what's more challenging in cars is the fact that they are moving rather than stationary. We saw in Matan's slide the let's go physical one, right? And that's an important point, because to start with, those cars obviously will have various operating systems. Okay, this by itself is a vulnerability. But not only that, the cars are parked outside in our parking lots. Usually we would have our PCs locked either at our homes or at the office, or we would have our mobile phone with us. But cars are left outside, and then every passerby can come and try and hack it. So as cars become smarter, we are calling for a holistic approach to address the automotive security challenge. The first principle is the containment, where we need to start from the core of the car and then take it through the interfaces and up to the network, okay? Now, when we say containment, we mean that we need to base it on basic infrastructure, hardware mechanisms that are already existing there. For example, secure boot, okay? Unique device key, hardware crypto engines, all those already exist, and we need to make a use of this infrastructure in order to provide security in cars. Then, verified security is also another principle that we believe that the security in the car needs to be built in layers, in a manner that if one layer is being compromised, then the others are left intact. Like, for example, if we have a denial of service attack over the GPS, it doesn't mean that the attacker can then reach the brakes of the car. Lastly, we're calling for standardization. Okay? We cannot afford a case where every company comes with its own protocol, its own standard, its own way of doing things. It will simply not work. In a car which comprises of many elements from many partners and players, we need to make sure that all these elements play well together. For this, we need to have a standard that defines those. So just before I hand over the microphone to Chris here, I want to say a few words about what we do in the Israeli office here of Qualcomm. So we have now started to work on automotive security as part of the global effort of the company to address this challenge. We're building and executing upon a roadmap that we're planning in our office and starting to build the building blocks for making security happen. Besides that, we're making the first steps in standardization that I mentioned, taking parts in some of the standard bodies and establishing others. And then besides that, we leverage obviously the rich ecosystem that we have here in Israel. So if any of you runs a startup company of a cybersecurity or even better automotive security, I welcome you to join us, and this can be a beginning of a beautiful journey. Thank you.
Well. Okay. First, I have a startup that does automotive cybersecurity. Just putting it out there.
All right, I hear you.
Second, I'm so happy you brought up the point of Qualcomm's roadmap, because I'm curious. So I'm going to ask you a question in front of, like an intimate question here. In my brief presentation, I spoke about companies like Google, Apple, Samsung becoming the new car manufacturers. And I'm curious, because Qualcomm traditionally has always been a tier 1 player in this field, making the systems. Do you see Qualcomm also venturing into the realm of being a full-blown car manufacturer, or a car by the standard that I maybe presented?
So to be honest, I don't think we're gonna see soon cars with Qualcomm logo. Although for Israelis, we have few hundreds of cars with Qualcomm logo, right? The employee company.
I used to work at Czech when we didn't get cars.
Right.
Yeah.
So don't get confused by that. But in smartphones, for example, Qualcomm started just from the modem. If you'd ask like 10, 15 years ago what Qualcomm does, people would tell you, Qualcomm does the modem. But ever since, Qualcomm expanded much within the smartphone. If you take now today a smartphone, it's much more than just the modem. It's a complete SoC with graphics and codecs and RF chips and everything around that. So when it comes to automotive, which is an amazing, rich, technology-rich environment, we have plenty of room to expand in terms of technology, and I believe that we'll see more and more components and technology elements from Qualcomm coming there.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Matan.